Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission here is to take a stack of compelling source material and really pull it apart to find the essential insights and, in this case, some truly shocking truths.
Today, we are immersing ourselves in the story surrounding the crash. And, the title is almost a misdirection. It's less about an accident, more about what that one moment unleashes.
Exactly. It's a catalyst for these layers of desperation, moral calculation, and, weirdly enough, protection.
And we're tracking two parallel lines of this really intense need. On one hand, you have Tegan, who is just fighting for her health and a future for her unborn child.
And on the other, you have Polly, who is driven by this, an overwhelming, all-consuming need for motherhood.
Right. And it's where those two lines of desperation collide that all the normal boundaries of morality they completely shatter.
The source material is structured brilliantly. It takes us through everything chronologically, starting with Tegan's crisis before the crash and then into the terrifying captivity that follows.
Yeah, and our focus for you, the listener, is to really get a handle on the sheer power of desperation. I mean, how far will a person go when they feel like they have absolutely no other choice?
We're going to analyze how Tegan's, her moment of moral courage leads her directly into this physical nightmare.
And how the massive information asymmetry, what Polly knows versus what Tegan knows, just drives the conflict higher and higher toward a really deadly climax.
It's a study in extremes. So let's unpack this. We have to start exactly 1 week before the crash and focus on this terrible choice Tegan Werner was facing in Lewiston, Maine.
Tegan is living in a state of just utter physical and financial exhaustion. She is barely surviving.
Right. The sources paint a really bleak picture, this dreary studio apartment in a truly rough part of town.
And it feels like the environment is just a mirror for her internal state.
And her body is paying the price for it all. She's working constantly. We're told she's nearly 8 months pregnant, so 35 weeks. That's already a huge physical burden.
And on top of that, she's holding down multiple double shifts at a grocery store.
Yeah.
The physical details they give us are so visceral, and they're really important to understanding her desperation. She's dealing with severe sciatica.
That's that sharp electric shooting pain right down the leg.
Exactly, a common thing in pregnancy. But you compound that with total exhaustion. Her feet are massively swollen from standing all day. And, maybe the most pregnant detail, the coat. Her winter coat no longer zips closed over her belly, so she's forced out into this brutal Maine weather, completely unprepared.
And her initial motivation for all this work was, what, nursing school? A way out.
Right. But as the delivery date gets closer, that goal has narrowed. It's really just down to one thing. Giving her unborn daughter, who she affectionately calls Little Tuna, a guaranteed better life.
And that better life, it seems, hinges on this really complex relationship she has with a man named Jackson Bruckner.
Mm-hmm. He visits her regularly. He brings discounted groceries, which is, a nod to her constant financial stress, and specifically Chinese food, usually chicken lo mein.
Jackson is such a paradox. He's an Ivy League attorney, summa cum laude, so he's clearly successful.
But he's described as physically non-threatening. Coke bottle glasses, big ears.
And he's not her boyfriend.
No.
And he's not the baby's father. He's a middleman. He's the go-between for the father who wants nothing to do with this child.
Correct. Jackson is the lawyer for a man named Simon Lamar. And this is where Tegan's life goes from just a financially strained drama into a true ethical and personal crisis.
Okay, so the conception, what do we know?
It happened during a drunken one-night stand Tegan had while she was visiting her brother Dennis, who's a ski instructor. For months, she just believed the father was some attractive, anonymous businessman.
Until she saw him on the news.
Exactly. 3 months before our story starts, she sees a news report. It's Simon Lamar, a married, local real estate developer with 2 children.
So suddenly, the anonymity is gone, and Tegan has this leverage she never even wanted.
And Simon's primary motive is just damage control. He is terrified of his marriage dissolving, his reputation collapsing, so Jackson is sent in with the solution.
The intriguing offer.
The life-changing offer. We're talking about a sum of money that is enough for Tegan's entire future, full tuition for nursing school, and a college fund for her daughter.
And the catch.
She has to sign a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA. It guarantees she would never, ever tell anyone, not the media, not her family, and most crucially, not the child, about Simon's paternity.
Wow. Think about that moral weight.
I mean, she's suffering physically, financially, risking her health for minimum wage with a baby due in just a few weeks. This NDA offers instant, absolute security.
And she was going to sign it.
She was. She saw this as securing their future, a painful but, a necessary transaction.
This is where the source material just delivers that first devastating twist. The night the documents were supposed to be signed, Tegan sees Simon again.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just seeing him, it's the specific triggering smell of his cologne that hits her.
And it brings it all back.
It triggers the repressed memory of what actually happened. It wasn't a drunken mistake, it was an assault. She recalls begging him to stop, him refusing, and the horrifying realization that he had drugged and raped her.
So the life-changing money is...
It's hush money, unequivocally, for a violent crime.
And this is her moment of greatest moral strength, which, so ironically, leads directly to her greatest physical peril. Despite the overwhelming financial desperation, the sciatica, no money for warm clothes, the baby on the way...
She refuses to sign.
She rejects the millions.
It's a rejection that's rooted in this primal need for justice, for autonomy. She will not monetize her trauma. She won't let Simon buy his way out.
And Simon's immediate response.
He calls her accusations preposterous. He just dismisses her completely.
But let's analyze Jackson's reaction here, because this is the first really profound betrayal of trust. Jackson, the attorney who's been bringing her Lamini, this non-threatening friend.
He immediately tries to persuade her to sign. He explicitly prioritizes the money over her accusation.
He actually questions her memory, right?
Yeah, he says something just chillingly cynical. He basically asks if she's imagining this because of the stress of the pregnancy. He tells her to forget whatever she thinks happened and just secure her future.
So Jackson isn't just Simon's lawyer anymore.
No, he's now acting as an agent of doubt. He's minimizing her trauma to protect the deal and, by extension, his client.
His failure to believe him must have been devastating. But it seems like it just hardens her resolve.
It does. She immediately decides she's going to the police. She needs safety, she needs support, and the only person she can think to turn to is her brother, Dennis, who's a 2-hour drive north.
So her moral refusal of the NDA has just turned into this frantic need to escape and find justice.
And that means getting in her car and driving.
So Tegan has to delay. She knows she needs to get out of Lewiston and up to Dennis's place. But first, she picks up an extra shift.
Probably needs just that little bit more cash for the trip, for gas.
Right. And she promises Dennis she'll explain everything. The whole contract reversal, the rape accusation face-to-face as soon as she gets there.
And she's driving a car that is, frankly, a ticking time bomb. It's a front-wheel drive Ford Fusion with 200,000 miles on it.
As she heads north, the weather starts to turn. The sources say flurries turn into genuine snow squalls, and visibility just drops.
And as she's driving, already completely stressed out, feeling vulnerable, she gets that ominous breaking up phone call. It's from Jackson Bruckner.
The timing is just critical. She hears these alarming, disjointed phrases.
Yeah, something like Simon is, and then the police, in fact.
So Tegan, who is looking at this through the lens of betrayal, she immediately thinks Simon is coming after her.
Right, like he's trying to frame her or maybe file some kind of preemptive restraining order. She needs to pull over.
She hits the brakes to find a safe shoulder, but the road is slick, the old tires have no grip.
And the brakes just fail entirely. That 200,000-mile Ford Fusion basically becomes a projectile.
The crash is catastrophic, a direct smash into a tree.
The airbag deploys, which saves her life, but the dashboard just crushes into her thighs, pinning her. She's got a painful head injury and a likely broken left ankle.
And the cold is immediate and overwhelming. Worst of all, there is no cell signal.
She tries 911 over and over, and the calls just fail. She is completely, totally isolated.
But all of Tegan's fear, it just focuses on her daughter. After the impact, little Tuna is silent.
There must have been a moment of absolute paralyzing terror, believing she's lost the baby from the trauma of the impact.
Only a faint, eventual flutter confirms movement, but the risk of fetal distress is now severe. She's pinned, she's freezing, and she's helpless.
Her desperation is total now. She can't walk, she can't call for help. She is literally facing the prospect of freezing to death alone in her car.
And then she sees a light.
This light leads to a man named Hank Thompson, a massive bearded man. The sources describe his appearance as immediately unsettling.
He's the kind of person who looks like he could murder you and dump your body in a swamp.
Exactly. But Hank, using a shovel, manages to pry her free from the crushed car.
We need to slow down right here because Hank's first decision is the first real, solid piece of evidence that this isn't a rescue.
Right. The nearest hospital is only 10 miles away.
10 miles. But Hank immediately refuses to take her there. He cites the blizzard, claims his truck would get stuck.
Instead, he insists on taking her to his remote cabin, his house. He argues it's the only safe alternative.
And Tegan, in shock, pinned, suffering from a likely fracture, has no choice but to rely on him. They arrive, and she meets his wife, Polly.
Now, Polly is a former nurse, which at first you have to imagine gives Tegan this huge sense of relief.
Oh, absolutely. She seems competent.
Yeah, she observes Tegan's injuries, the pregnancy, the fatigue, the probable fractured ankle, and she confirms the phone lines and power are down, which makes the hospital seem inaccessible, in the short term. It sounds like she's offering genuine care.
But the setup is immediately suspicious. Hank insists Tegan be moved to the basement.
And Polly tries to explain it away. She says the basement was converted into a hospital room when her mother was sick. It has a hospital bed, a commode.
But Tegan's instinct is just screaming at her. She notices this sickening smell of decay, which makes her question the whole scenario.
But out of sheer exhaustion and pain, she accepts the Tylenol and water he gives her.
And that's it. The confinement is formalized in that basement. Tegan immediately recognizes she's not a guest. She's a prisoner.
So she tries to create a deterrent. She invents this fake, loving, handsome attorney husband named Jackson.
Using the real Jackson's name.
Exactly. Knowing it sounds official and hoping it will frighten her captors into thinking she's being actively searched for.
And Polly latches onto this. She learns Tegan is still planning on going to the hospital as soon as the road's clear.
So Polly's response is just to lie, constantly, about the snowplow being delayed, the phone lines being permanently damaged, the roads, they never clear.
She is actively using the weather as leverage to keep Tegan captive.
And Tegan, despite her pain, starts noticing these signs of manipulation. She sees fresh bruises on Polly's wrist.
And she initially thinks Hank must be an abuser, which creates this false sense of sympathy for Polly.
Right. Tegan is applying her own empathy to a situation where it's completely misplaced.
She also notices Polly is exhibiting this excessive, almost obsessive control over her diet.
Yeah, Polly expresses this deep, very specific concern over Tegan eating cold cuts because of listeria risk and tuna because of mercury.
Which are genuine risks for a pregnant woman, but the intensity of Polly's concern feels unnatural.
And that intensity quickly turns criminal. Tegan notices a distinct chalky aftertaste in the food Polly prepares for her. A barbecue chicken sandwich, mashed potatoes, food that makes her sleep half the day away.
She's being drugged.
She pieces it together. The sources confirm Polly was spiking the mashed potatoes with Benadryl, which is a strong sedative.
So this confirms it. Tegan is a hostage, and Polly is actively manipulating her, moving beyond just deception into pharmacological control.
The moment Tegan realizes the nurse is drugging her food, all possibility of trust is gone. She knows with certainty that she is in grave danger, trapped in a basement, injured, and rapidly approaching her delivery date.
Okay, this brings us to Polly. And we can't just view her as a simple villain. We have to understand the depth of her motive, which is rooted in this really profound trauma and loss.
Yeah, Polly and Hank's entire adult life was just shaped by infertility. They had spent 8 exhausting years and every single penny they had trying to conceive.
3 failed IVF cycles and 1 failed adoption attempt.
Right. They were told definitively, you will never be parents. And the resulting despair was just total.
And this despair is what leads to the incident 2 years prior, which is this critically important piece of backstory that really defines Polly's instability.
She was working an overnight shift in the newborn nursery at Roosevelt Memorial Hospital, and overcome by grief and despair, she tried to leave the hospital with a newborn baby.
Wow, it wasn't a malicious attempt to harm the child, though, right? It was more of a break from reality.
Exactly. She justified it by saying she only wanted to hold the baby a little longer, maybe confusing it with the child she was told she would never have. She lost her job immediately, a massive loss of identity and credibility.
But she avoided criminal charges.
Thankfully, yes. But that incident confirmed just how psychologically fragile she was.
And Hank's response to the incident confirms his primary driver, which is just protecting Polly.
He has always been her rock. We know from earlier in their marriage, he actually spent 2 months in prison for smashing a man's nose who had harassed Polly at a bar. His loyalty is fierce, unwavering, and often violent.
So when Tegan, heavily pregnant, injured, and totally alone, literally crashes into their lives,
Polly sees this as fate, the final answer to her mother's old promise. Someday, your family will be complete.
this is the critical shift in her morality. Polly starts to rationalize the kidnapping by judging Tegan.
Right. She focuses on Tegan's irresponsible decision, the one-night stand, and her current instability. And she convinces herself with this really warped logic that she, Polly, would be the better, more responsible, and more deserving mother for little Tuna.
So she's not just delaying Tegan anymore, she's acting with premeditation. Her goal is to force a delivery.
Yeah, she starts researching how to induce labor at home. She settles on this incredibly risky concoction called midwife's brew.
Which is what?
A potent mix of castor oil, apricot juice, lemon tea, and almond butter. And it requires her to make a risky trip to the supermarket for the ingredients.
While Polly is preparing to induce labor, Tegan realizes she has to fight back with every remaining resource she has.
Her first attempt is dramatic. Attempted arson.
She uses Jackson's engraved gold birthday lighter, which had somehow been overlooked and left in her pocket. She gathers a pile of old magazines next to the bed.
And manages to ignite them. She's hoping the smoke detector will trigger a 911 call, which would be her only chance of outside intervention.
But Polly's too quick.
Far too quick. She rushes down, smothers the fire with a blanket, and immediately confiscates the lighter. Keegan loses her last piece of potential leverage.
So the next escalation is violent. Tegan, just fueled by terror and anger over Polly's blatant lies about the ambulance.
She stabs Polly's hand with a fork during a meal.
And that physical violence, for Hank, that confirms Tegan, is volatile and, in his mind, dangerous to Polly.
And his reaction is terrifying. Hank comes out of the basement to collect the plate, and Tegan is completely exposed.
This is where the physical power dynamic is just cemented. Hank doesn't even need to lay a hand on her to exert total control.
No. He delivers this low-growled, terrifying threat. If you lay another finger on my wife, just one little finger, you're going to regret it.
And the sources emphasize the psychological impact of this moment. Tegan is so utterly terrified, facing down a man she genuinely believes is capable of murder,
that she spontaneously wets herself.
That detail is crucial. It's a total involuntary physiological surrender. It signifies that the psychological pressure and fear have just completely broken down her defenses.
She is now operating purely in survival mode.
But despite this setback, she finds a fleeting moment of mobility. Polly, maybe feeling guilty or trying to keep up the facade of care, helps her into a rusty old wheelchair.
The one left over from Polly's mother. And Tegan uses this chance to search the room.
And she finds something vital. A plastic baggie with 2 syringes and a needle. A potential weapon.
Or potential leverage.
So when Polly returns with the midwife's brew, which Tegan correctly suspects is spiked with Benadryl too, Tegan rejects the drink.
And she grabs the needle, holds it against Polly's neck, and tries to force Polly to call 911.
A desperate act. But Polly, with her superior nursing knowledge and quick reactions, she manages to retrieve the syringe. She realizes Tegan is becoming more and more resourceful.
More dangerous.
Right. And the external world, however, is closing in. Tegan's brother, Dennis, shows up at the cabin looking for his missing sister.
Dennis, he knows Tegan is a fighter. He knows she would have immediately sought help, so he's suspicious.
But Polly is a master manipulator in her own house. She fabricates an excuse, blaming a crash Tegan made downstairs on their non-existent cat.
And Dennis leaves. Still suspicious, but convinced Tegan isn't there. It gives Polly critical time.
The police follow. A young officer named Malloy visits, showing Hank a photograph of Tegan Werner. This is the moment Hank has to choose.
Truth or his wife.
And he chooses Polly. His decision is driven entirely by the memory of the incident and Polly's subsequent suicide attempt. He'd seen her take an overdose and fail. He knows the depths of her despair.
He's terrified of her fragility. So he lies, successfully deterring the officer, who only checks the backyard and then leaves.
This confirms Hank is now fully complicit. But Tegan's condition is getting rapidly worse. Hank insists she has to go to the hospital.
And this is when Polly plays her final terrifying card, the suicide threat.
She blocks the door, insisting she won't mess around like last time, referencing her overdose.
She tells him, unequivocally, you take her to the hospital, and when you get back, you'll find me dead.
That is the ultimate coercion, and Hank concedes. He agrees to keep Tegan captive for a few more days, sacrificing Tegan's safety to protect his wife's mental stability.
His protection of Polly has literally become Tegan's jail cell.
So by the 4th day of captivity, Tegan isn't just uncomfortable anymore. She is critically ill.
Yeah, she's showing classic signs of systemic collapse, shaking uncontrollably, alternating between intense cold and heat, and having these intense hallucinations.
Including seeing Simon Lamar mocking her, saying she should have taken the money.
And the fetal movement is now dangerously weak.
Her left ankle, the one she injured in the crash, is now the focus of this catastrophe. It's bright red, shiny, and most alarmingly, it lacks a palpable pulse.
This is not just a fracture anymore. She has a severe active infection sepsis and a probable deep vein thrombosis, a DVT.
Okay, let's pause on that. Sepsis is a life-threatening complication where the body's response to an infection starts to damage its own tissues and organs.
Right. And the DVT, the blood clot, is almost an expected outcome from being pinned, immobile, and pregnant. Pregnancy itself increases clotting risk. The lack of movement in that basement has turned her fracture into a systemic medical emergency.
If she dies, the baby dies.
And Polly knows this. The nurse in her recognizes the high fever, the infection symptoms. She understands that if Tegan succumbs, her last chance at motherhood is gone.
So this forces Polly into another desperate illegal act.
She decides to impersonate a former colleague, a Dr. Chloe Pissarro, to call in prescriptions. She manages to get oral antibiotics, cephalexin, and blood thinners, enoxaparin.
She knows that's not enough, though.
She knows IV antibiotics are what's truly needed to fight raging sepsis. But this is the most she can do without exposing herself and Hank. It's this terrifying ethical compromise. Keep the mother alive just long enough for the baby to be delivered.
But Hank is watching Tegan decline, and he breaks. He realizes his promise to Polly is rapidly becoming a death sentence for Tegan and the baby.
He breaks his promise.
Yeah.
While Polly is away picking up the illegal medication, he interrupts Tegan.
And he acts quickly. He lifts Tegan out of the bed, maneuvering her physical bulk and her injured leg, and he intends to rush her to Roosevelt Memorial Hospital.
As Hank carries her to his truck, the lines between reality and hallucination just blur for Tegan. She thinks, or maybe she briefly sees, Simon Lamar standing by the truck.
The trauma and the fever are just merging her reality with her deepest fears. Hank forces her into the passenger seat and starts driving.
And this drive is Hank's moment of confession. His redemption, maybe? He's deeply emotional, weeping, and he tells Tegan the truth.
That he never wanted her to stay captive. It was all Polly, driven by her fragility after the incident.
And he begs Tegan, all I'm saying is please don't ruin her life. Please. He confirms Polly's psychological issues, the suicide attempt.
And Tegan, in her feverish state, starts to realize Hank wasn't the monster.
He was the prisoner, a prisoner of his own devotion.
They get to the hospital. Hank is terrified of being implicated, but his primary goal is accomplished, saving Tegan. He flags down a stranger, gets Tegan onto a stretcher, and makes sure she's taken into emergency care before he just disappears back into the blizzard.
Desperate to save his wife from jail.
Tegan is immediately stabilized with IV fluids, antibiotics, surgical consultation for her ankle. But the hospital is where the secondary betrayals and redemptions happen. First, Jackson Bruckner arrives.
Jackson, the man who betrayed her trust by dismissing her rape accusation.
And now he's apologizing profusely. He reveals that after he left Tegan's apartment, he actually did his due diligence. He contacted another woman Simon Lamar had paid off with an NDA.
And confirmed that Simon was, in fact, a serial rapist who used drugs.
Jackson confesses his profound shame for not believing Tegan initially. He claims he was calling her just before the crash to tell her he was going to the police to back up her accusation.
It's a moment of fragile legal redemption. Jackson, the original agent of cynicism, is now trying to become her protector.
But the true, most horrifying betrayal comes from her only family. Her brother, Dennis, returns and tries to remove Jackson, while Tegan is sleeping.
He approaches her 5E line.
This is the critical moment where Tegan's captor becomes her savior. Polly, having followed Hank to the hospital, driven by this panic mix of fear and residual nursing responsibility.
She enters Tegan's room, and she immediately realizes Dennis, Tegan's brother, is trying to do something to the IV line.
And she acts on instinct. She uses her professional nurse's voice to shout and intervene. Jackson, who is still there, reacts instantly and grabs Dennis.
And the substance Dennis was trying to inject is later revealed to be morphine.
Morphine? Why?
His motive is just so strangely warped. He had suffered a severely broken leg while skiing and wanted Tegan to have the same pain relief that he relied on. He saw his sister suffering and just wanted to help.
But the dose, combined with her sepsis and possible respiratory depression, it could have been fatal.
Easily. So Polly, acting as the credible nurse she once was, explains to security that Dennis was trying to inject something into the IV line.
In a terrifying inversion, The person who had been drugging Tegan to keep her captive is now the person who saves her life from the accidental, misplaced protection of her own brother.
In the immediate aftermath, Tegan stabilizes. She gets the necessary medical care, her ankle is scheduled for surgery, and she delivers a healthy baby girl. She names her Tia.
And justice, meanwhile, is finally served for the rape. Jackson's testimony, combined with Tegan's account and the other victims he uncovered, it puts Simon Lamar in jail facing significant prison time.
So that moral path Tegan chose before the crash, it finally pays off.
But the web of betrayal and protection is still spinning. Dennis is jailed for attempted assault or murder and is awaiting trial.
And Tegan is left to process this impossible truth. Jackson, the original betrayer, became a genuine protector, while Dennis, her only blood family, became the lethal threat.
The question then turns back to Polly and Hank. Polly leaves the hospital with Hank, and they've reconciled.
Hank had taken her suicide threat deadly seriously. When they got home, he'd hidden every dangerous item, pills, razors, scissors from her. And Polly realizes that Hank's fierce love, their relationship, is the only family she truly needs.
She acknowledges her deep psychological issues and agrees to see a psychiatrist.
Dr. Solinsky. This marks the official end of their desperate quest for a child and the beginning of Polly's path towards stability.
Shortly after, Tegan receives flowers at the hospital and a small brown teddy bear clutching a red heart. The card is signed, "Love, Polly."
This gift forces Tegan to perform a moral calculation. When Jackson asks her about the mysterious sender, Tegan makes a profound choice.
She tells him, "I don't know who Polly is. I never heard the name before in my life."
She's choosing silence as an act of protection. She recognizes the complex truth of what happened. Hank drove her to the hospital and Polly stopped Dennis. They saved her life.
So she chooses to conceal the entire kidnapping to grant them the freedom they provided her.
And that's the heart of the moral ambiguity of this entire narrative. Tegan's new, secure life is built on a lie of omission. She protects her former captors because their desperate, illegal actions ultimately resulted in her survival.
1 year later, we find Tegan and Tia stable. Tegan used some of the money she managed to secure from Simon before she refused the deal.
Right, probably an initial negotiation payment.
To purchase and fix up a 2-bedroom townhouse.
And Jackson is a constant presence. He's now a potential romantic partner, suggesting he'd be a devoted father figure for Tia. And Tegan, still guarding her new reality, chooses to keep the entire kidnapping a secret from him.
Her security depends on that silence.
And Polly and Hank, they find their own unexpected fulfillment. They legally become foster parents to Sadie, the neighbor girl, whose father, Mitch Hambley, has recently died.
Hank is completely transformed. He's become this deeply devoted father figure, building a clubhouse, reading stories. Their cup, the sources say, is overflowing.
But the source material holds one final, profound twist, and it links Hank's protective nature to the most serious crime of all.
It's revealed during a snowy night conversation between Hank and Sadie, reminiscing about the night Mitch died.
Hank confesses to Sadie that he witnessed Mitch abusing her. He intervened violently, throwing Mitch down the front steps. When Mitch tried to get back up, clearly intending to take his anger out on Sadie,
Hank grabbed a heavy piece of firewood and struck him,
causing the blunt head trauma that killed him. Hank covered it up, hoping the police would think Mitch had just passed out drunk and suffocated in the snow.
He didn't want the police to know he'd committed murder, mostly because if he went to jail, Polly would be left alone and Sadie would be sent back into the system.
And Hank confesses to Sadie that she saw him do it.
Wow.
And Sadie just looks up at him, her protector, the man who built her a clubhouse, and she says, "You're my dad, Hank."
She had kept his secret all along.
Exactly. Hank committed murder, concealed it from the police, and gained a family. Sadie kept his secret to secure her future with the only parents who truly cared for her. The ultimate act of protection violence resulting in death guaranteed the happiness of his family.
This entire narrative is just a profound exploration of how motives, even good ones, can warp morality. We saw Tegan, driven by justice, choose the morally superior path by rejecting the money.
Only to have that very decision lead her directly into a medical crisis and captivity.
And we saw the devastating power of Hank's protection. His fear of Polly's suicide threat became Tegan's jail. But that same violent protection, when he applied it to Sadie against Mitch Hambley, created the home and stability he and Polly so desperately needed.
The central irony is just inescapable. Tegan's captors saved her life from her own brother, and Hank secured his family through murder.
Every moment of peace in this story is founded on a lie. Tegan's stable life with Jackson is predicated on concealing the truth of her kidnapping.
And Hank and Polly's joyful life with Sadie is literally built on a concealed homicide.
The source material forces us to grapple with the core question. When does the ultimate act of protection, whether it requires silence, calculated deception, or even violence, justify the resulting lie?
In this world, it seems the only way to find justice or happiness was to break the law and cover the truth.
It leaves you wondering, what secrets are you willing to keep to protect the peace you finally earned?